Hey everybody, it's your boy. Sorry for the dishevelled look. I've been decorating for the past week, so I've not had much time to do much other than shower and decorate. So that's it. Apologies. But today's video I thought would be an important one. Now it's going to be about the US election, and usually I don't really get involved in US politics too much because there's a lot going on at home and somebody needs to cover it. Yes, hopefully I will be touching on Labour at some point this week or next. I don't know, it depends when the decorating finishes, unfortunately. But I thought I'd get this one out early because this is the one that I really need to do. This is one that I was planning on doing before I ran out of battery. And well, you know, once you run out of battery, you have to decide, well, do I continue with the microphone and use the avatar, or do I just take a day off? And I chose to take a day off and think about a few things, but how I was going to structure this video in the first place. Now obviously there are things that have already been said, so by and large I'm not going to talk about the alleged fraud, or rather just fraud. It was fraud, we all know it was fraud, but other people have talked about it. I'm going to ignore that in this video because other people have talked about it to death and they know more about it than I do. They know more about the system and the history of electoral fraud in the US, so I'm going to defer to those people. They know what they're talking about, and you probably know who they are anyway. So if you want my basic opinion on it, yes, there was fraud. There's something going on here. It doesn't make sense that this election is going on so long in this day and age. I just don't believe that there's no shenanigans. This video will be about several things, but mainly what it could be like in the future if either side were to win, or how the guys lost, or how they won. So without further ado, let's begin. First, what would a Biden presidency be like, and what would the impact of it on the culture war be at large? And also just geopolitically, we can say straight off the bat, he probably won't last a full term. He may last a full term, he may not. It honestly depends on his age and his health, which if the signs have been pointing out towards, he's not looking particularly good. He's certainly not sounding very good. We will see Kamala Harris at some point assume more responsibilities. She may end up becoming president. So she will be the first female president, but unelected. That's literally how it's going to go down. Are you proud, women? The impact on the culture war will mean that essentially the right wing will have taken one step, possibly even two steps backwards in the little progress that they managed to make under Trump. We will see the return of radical left-wing thought into the federal government. You will see critical race theory return to educate all these federal workers on how evil they are as white people. You will see the left re-emboldened to some extent. Obviously, Biden is not the communist, the radical left's ultimate choice. That would be Bernie, but the smartest amongst them will know that he could be a vessel from which they can enter the federal government and continue the cathedral's plans all along. This is something that I think Keir Starmer is, and what a lot of smart socialists and SJWs in Britain have noticed that he could be. So expect him to push all this stuff, at least non-violently. I think all the violence will come to an end in the United States because, one, the left will say, well, we don't have our ideal guy, but he's in there, Trump's gone, that's it, jobs are good. Or what could happen is he gets in on the back of these people and then throws them in jail. We've already seen in Portland loads of violence being crushed by the police now that they think that Biden has won. You can expect Silicon Valley to have even more free reign to censor right-wing voices online, or just dissenting voices in general. They will be doing that. Biden's not going to do a damn thing about that. In fact, he will embolden them. He will make deals with them. He won't be bringing them to senatorial hearings like the Republicans have been doing, to bring them to task, or at the very least to appear like they're being brought to task. You're not going to see any of that. You'll see organizations, you will see all this stuff pushed up to maximum, because I imagine they feel like they are making up lost ground because of Trump, because Trump has essentially been a kind of bulwark against them. He's managed to somewhat stop some of the tide, but not all of it, and they're going to be rushing as fast as they can to get legislation out, to get something done, some kind of subversion undertaken, because, well, since Obama left, they've not had much to do. Now, as for geopolitically, we can expect more wars. We can expect him to intervene in places where America probably ought not to intervene. And you can expect many more lives to be ruined and lost, not just in terms of military deaths from America, but civilians all over the globe. You can expect that to happen. You can expect domestically that he will enact laws like he did in the 1990s that are draconian and don't help people. So expect crime bills of that nature. Expect dumb SJW laws like the Violence Against Women Act. Expect things like that, but maybe not for women as such, but maybe for LGBT people, even though they don't need these laws because they've already covered by existing legislature. I expect things like that to happen. And essentially, yeah, it's a left-wing government. What can I say? Now, as for the stuff he promised in terms of all the Green New Deal stuff that he basically says he's not in favour of but is in favour of, don't expect him to get rid of these energy suppliers in 2024. Don't expect these jobs to go straight off the bat. That is very quick. That's a very short time span. He's not going to get rid of them that quickly, in my opinion. He's going to start the process, and it may take decades, but that's the thing that he was always going to do anyway. He is going to export those jobs to China because he's Beijing Biden, and that's what he does. Expect a more neoliberal, neocon foreign policy anyway, not just intervention, but in terms of his trade policy. He's not going to be America first. He's not going to want to create jobs for Americans. He would rather export these jobs, these high-paying, high-skilled jobs overseas to China and other third-world countries. And you can imagine that he will basically leave Americans to have the service-based jobs, which don't pay well, the minimum wage, and not only that, they've got to compete with ever more people coming into the country, because he's not going to have as limiting a immigration policy as Trump has had. He's not changed over the past couple of decades. What more can I say about that, I guess? So let's move on to Trump. Now, what can we expect from Trump? Honestly, I think we'll see more of the same if he wins. He will further spout rhetoric about trying to drain the swamp, trying to defeat Silicon Valley. He will continue things, I think. We won't see anything new unless something happens off the bat. Like, for example, leaving the WHO. That never would have happened if COVID hadn't reared its ugly head. He will definitely continue the non-interventionist push for peace policy that he has been pursuing in places all over the world, like North Korea. He has done so in Eastern Europe. He's done so all over the place, and that seems to have been working. America shouldn't just have to be the world policeman. Why can't they be the world mediator? At one point in the early 20th century, they were mediators. Teddy Roosevelt mediated the end of the Russo-Japanese War. Why can't Trump do something similar? Hell, Biden could do something similar, but he won't because moneyed interests and he's a warmonger. I think that's what he's going to try and do foreign policy-wise. And domestically, we'll see the continuation of the wall being built, immigration being limited, jobs coming back in. The trade war with China will continue, although I think that might end by the end of his second term. I don't know who's going to win, but from what I've heard, he's not been doing a very good job on it. But will he actually do the things that we want him to do, like get rid of the protections for the Silicon Valley giants like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, and actually punish them? No, I don't think he will. These are baby steps. Trump, if he gets his second term, much like his first term, these will be slow, incremental steps. Ultimately, it will be his successors, the right successors, that will ultimately create the change that we may want to see on our side happen. Don't expect anything major. In fact, you shouldn't expect anything major at all from him. Anybody who thought that there'd be massive changes were wishing too much, honestly. And probably I fell for that too. It's not how the right rolls, unfortunately. It's very much Burkean change, where things are done incrementally over time. But unfortunately, time is not really on our side. Although, let's be honest, any little slow change is better than no change whatsoever. And there has been things, like for example, the rolling back of Title IX, which nobody other than MRAs, that helps young men on campuses across America not have to deal with these kangaroo courts. Just expect more incremental change, taxes to go down, and jobs to come back, and a better COVID response, because Biden wants to put you all in a lockdown, which will create a Great Depression. And we don't want that, do we? Before we get into how the two could potentially have lost this battle, nobody has won. The constitutional arrangements wherein they announce a winner, the mechanisms put in place, have not decided yet because the votes haven't been counted because of the shenanigans. So let's just think hypothetically how Trump has gotten to this situation and also how Biden could have potentially got into this situation. I think for Trump, there's more to talk about than Biden, because honestly, we don't know the extent to which there's been voter fraud and things like that. So let's just talk about maybe more Biden as a candidate and what he wants, and also Kamala as well. But first, it's only fair we talk about Trump first. Now, you're not going to like what I'm going to have to say here, but I'm sorry, but Trump, it's an easy election to win. On paper anyway, I know. But something went wrong in his campaign, regardless of the shenanigans, to make it this close. Now, I wasn't expecting it to be a landslide, obviously. I wasn't expecting Trump to have an easy election in like that, but a sort of, close run in the sense that he got to 270 first, and then it was like a good defeat for Biden, if that makes sense. It's an honourable defeat for him. He did well. It wasn't a massive win, but a good victory. Kind of like Obama versus Romney. Expected that kind of thing. Just, going through the motions. Wasn't an amazing landslide like in 2008, but good win. Good effort, Biden. That's really what it should have been, but it wasn't. I can't begin to imagine what the issue was. I've just read a thread by Larry, somebody who I know from Jim Jesus' community, and essentially it was a combination of poor leadership from Trump, his ego, not only that, but the various parts of the Republican Party, so not only his campaign staff, but also the RNC and another organisation that I can't quite remember. They weren't coordinated very well. The various states that they have won, some of them weren't doing well as others, apart from Florida, where they have a very good, well-run operating machine. If you get the essentials done properly, if you get the basics done right, you will win elections. The basics and the essentials weren't done right. I think, honestly, getting rid of Steve Bannon was the wrong mistake to make. Yeah, he did well during his presidency without him, but Bannon wins you elections. As he said during I think it was the 2018 Oxford speech, he said that the Democrats won that particular midterms because they worked harder. Now, maybe Trump's campaign and the RNC weren't working hard enough, and we can hypothesize as to why that would be the case. Maybe Trump's campaign thought, this is easy. It's Sleepy Joe. Why would anybody vote for him? Which is a easy thing to think. That's something reasonable. But the RNC, why would they not work hard enough? Why are some of them now, like Dan Crenshaw, already gearing up for 2024? It's simple. The neocons, who make up a slight minority at this point, but who have most of the power, they don't want to work hard because they want Biden. They want to work with him. They want a return to normalcy. Their normalcy. He's been let down by the bigwigs in his party. Not the ones that he brought in, not the ones who got on board with the Trump train, but the ones who are like your Bushes and your Romneys and your McCains. Those kinds of people. They're letting him down. In fact, some of them didn't even vote for him. They betrayed the party. Which, to be honest, with how wet some of the Tories are, there was a new party that was made, the Cook Party. Most Conservatives didn't betray the party. It was a minority, a tiny, tiny, tiny minority of people. But in America, I have never seen such rank displays of betrayal, of treacherousness. It's astounding. But that's how much I could gather how Trump could have messed this up, or at the very least made it closer than it ought to have been. There was mistakes done by him and his team, and also the RNC trying to, obviously push him out the way, try and do as much as they can not to win, which is typical of neocon. Now, as for Biden, well, it goes without saying the guy's mentally ill, and it's not his fault that he is. He clearly has something wrong with him, but that isn't good. Not only that, he is the representative of the old guard, the old ways of doing things, the neoliberal/neocon dichotomy of the last 30 years. People don't want that. I can pretty much see that most people in the United States don't want him. They don't want neocons, they don't want neolibs. They want something different, whether that be like Bernie Sanders, who is basically a communist, or like Trump, who is a populist right-wing. Compared to Biden, he does offer something different, something unique, something that America desperately needs. Aside from that, there's also the fact that, well, a lot of the legislation that he brought in as vice president and beforehand in the Clinton era is not something that people want. They want drugs legalized. They want the crime bills to be more fair, I guess, not to put people in prison for victimless crimes, or at the very least, to minimise the sentences that they get, for example. Less intervention. And as for Kamala, that goes without saying. The woman literally accused him of rape, or at least sexual misconduct, during the primaries, and here she is now as his VP, purely because of her race and gender. That alone says something about her character, because she willingly chose to be the VP. She willingly chose to run as one, despite all those things she said. So she can't be trusted. She is somebody who says one thing and does another. And not only that, she's a pig. She is a former cop, but not just any old cop. She's a bad cop. She's a corrupt cop that will withhold vital evidence that could exonerate a person just to get those quotas up. All those things are what you would assume people don't want. That would make Biden and Kamala lose if they do lose the election. Obviously, the numbers are suggesting, apart from the false ones, something else. Why is that? I'll just leave it with this. People desire safety over liberty. That's unfortunately where we are, And that's probably what has fed into the current vote count that we've seen. People are terrified of COVID, even though despite all the evidence that suggests that, apart from in a few cases, most people will be fine and they will not die of it, 90% of us, in fact. People want that safety. They desire it above liberty even. Liberty is too much of a responsibility to have for them, and they'd rather feel safe and have somebody give them that safety and provide it. And that's unfortunately what most human beings are like. So the Republicans and right-wingers are going to have to deal with that and think of how they're going to win elections, how they're going to win culture wars and things like that with that in mind. Now, this isn't the end. It's never the end. Just because they won an election or look like they're going to win an election doesn't mean that that's the end of the fight. That doesn't mean that you should give up. That just means you need to reevaluate the situation and think of new ways of beating them. That's really all you have to do. And that goes for those of us who haven't got elections in other countries, like Britain, like France, like Australia, New Zealand. She won, Ardern, but that doesn't mean you give in. It's actually very easy to take the black pill, isn't it? It actually is. It's not something that's hard. It's very easy to just give up hope and not do anything. It's laziness. But it's very hard to take the red pill. Very hard, even I would say, to take the white pill, which is the whole point of that metaphor. Because as Lawrence Fishburne presents to Keanu Reeves, take the red pill, all is revealed, and your life will never be the same again. But if you take the blue pill, life goes on. It's easier to take that, isn't it? But he took the difficult challenge, didn't he? He took the difficult one. That's what you have to do. You have to win. You have to pick the right nominee as well, which is what we paid for dearly in the UK. We didn't expect Boris to be the wet that he actually was. We thought at the very least he wasn't as bad as Theresa May. He's actually looking out to be even worse than her. 2024 is something that I've always been banging on about on stream after stream, video after video. That is actually the most important election, regardless if Trump wins or not. Because ultimately it's who replaces him that will judge how well the Republicans and the American right do. Do you go with the Dan Crenshaws? Or do you go with somebody who's continuing the populist culture war style fight? That's what you need to think. You need to get the right people in. If you're lucky, somebody who will enact sweeping change and isn't a coward and will do what is necessary. I've probably gone off topic there, so I'll end the video there. Those are my thoughts on the election. It ain't over, even after the election when the winner is finally announced. It ain't over. Just gotta knuckle down, deal with it, accept the L. Just keep doing what you're doing, guys. And eventually we might win. So anyway, I'll see you all later.